Morning. Welcome to another video lecture on solving word problems. Sa lesson na ito, titignan natin ang mga geometry and age-related word problems. Okay? At the end of the session, we are expected to, number one, recall basic geometric formulas on perimeter and circumference and area. Okay, nandun yan sa asynchronous material. Number two, constructing age tables. That was thoroughly demonstrated in the asynchronous material. And of course, to solve geometry and age-related algebraic word problems using our RESA or RISA format. Okay? Homework for today, number one, make sure that you do FA13B today before 6 p.m. Download and study the asynchronous learning materials para sa susunod na session. Okay, they will be about the last two types of algebraic word problems on uniform motion and mixtures. And finally, continue answering your Cerebri exercises 4.1, 4.2, and 9.1. By the way, nagkamali ako nung huling recorded session. Nilagay ko doon 9.2. No, Cerebri exercise 9.2. Please correct that. It's 9.1. Okay? Right. So before we dive deep, tingnan muna natin ang exit ticket answers. Okay? You were expected to write the representation and set up your equation or inequality for these three problems. Of course, there are variations to possible correct representations and equations or inequalities, but here are some possibilities. Okay? Tignan kung meron dyan, nakuha ninyo. Pause nyo yung video, then examine your answers and these answers. Pareho ba? Dapat at least roughly, if we solve the equations, we should get the same answer. Also, look at number 3 here. Kapag sinolve nyo yung equation na yan, 2 times the quantity x plus 1 minus the quantity x plus 2 equals x. Did you try to solve that? You should notice something. What kind of an equation is that in number 3? And what does it say about the conditions in the problem? Sa inyo na yan. That's a thinking question. Okay? Now, for your entry ticket for this session, dapat nasagutan nyo na rin ito, no? For the first part, disregard this instruction on top. No? For part 1, you should use the indicated measures to write the completely simplified expressions in number 1 and 2 for perimeter. Okay, for number 1, perimeter ng rectangle. Remember, the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle is P equals 2 times the quantity L plus W. So our length, I can call this my length and this my width right there. So I will have for my perimeter 2 times the quantity x minus 7 plus x plus 1. Pag sinimplify mo yan, you get p equals 2 times 2x and then what's that? Minus 6. Yeah. So your final answer, dapat daw simplified. Remember, pag nag-simplify ka ng expressions, there shouldn't be grouping symbols in the final answer. So we apply our DPMA here. I should get 4x minus 12. Tama? Saan yan? There you go. 4x minus 12. Same thing here for number 2. We add these three measurements. 3x plus 1, 2x minus 7, 2 minus 3x to get 2x plus 4. And note for both final answers, malinaw na nakasulat ang ating unit of measure. That's one thing you do not forget, especially when answering geometry-related word problems. Okay? May units of measure yan typically. So, huwag kakalimutan lalagyan sa final answer. Now, for the second part here, complete the age table by typing the simplified expressions. Now, this was also thoroughly explained in the asynchronous material. So, for the first row here, row number 1, we are given the present age, x plus 5. Okay? So, if you want to determine the age 7 years ago of that person, you reduce x plus 5 by 7. So, dapat na makuha natin x plus 5 minus 7 or simplified as x minus 2. Yeah? In 11 years naman, syempre, x plus 5 plus 11, you get x plus 16. Now, for row 2 here, in 9 years. Pero 7 years ago yung given na age. So maybe what we can do is to work out the present age first. This is the age 7 years ago. So to get to the present age, add ka ng 7. We should get x. What's that? Plus 6. Di ba? And then to determine the age of that person in 9 years, add ka ng 9 kay x plus 6. You should get x plus 15. Diba? And finally, this last cell, present age yung tinatanong, given yung age 11 years from now. So, syempre, you work backward, you reduce 2x plus 3 by 11. You should get 2x plus, what's that? Minus 11 eh. So, minus 8. 2x minus 8. There you go. Okay? Very simple ang exit ticket natin. Sana nakumpleto nyo, na sagutan ng tama lahat ng items. Okay? Right. Sir, should geometry or age-related problems be difficult? Hindi naman. No? There are key points that we can look for and we can follow when we are solving these types of word problems. Starting with geometry-related word problems, meron tayong mga dyan, parang key strategies. No? Number 1, draw. Mag-drawing sa notebook, sa scratch paper. No, it doesn't have to be beautiful, doesn't have to be accurate or to scale. No? Okay lang. Triangle, let's say. Okay na yan. And make sure also to label all the parts with the information that you know. For example, you're given the lengths of the sides of the triangle. Label mo yan. Especially, again, no, huwag kakalimutan unit of measure. And then you use the appropriate formulas. Say we are looking for the perimeter of that triangle. Yeah. And again, no, be sure to affix the appropriate unit of measure. Huwag kakalimutan yan. A lot of students forget to affix in the final answer the correct unit of measure. And of course, for solving word problems, typically, the problems are, syempre, expressed in words. So it's only natural to express your final answer in word form also. And when you do that, do not forget about the unit of measure. Tulad niyan, no? The perimeter of the triangle is 17 centimeters. Okay? Very simple. Ito yung mga formulas ulit for area and perimeter. At this point, if you have engaged the asynchronous materials, these formulas should already be in your notebook. No? But kung hindi, pause the video again, no? Take a screenshot and copy or store it and copy it later. Now, on to an example. Angles 1, 2, and 3 are angles on a line. The measure of angle 2 is 35 degrees more than that of angle 1, while the measure of angle 3 is 25 degrees more than that of angle 1. Find the measures of each angle. As always, pause muna ang video, try answering it yourself using the full RESA format, then hit play when you're done. Right, this point dapat meron na kayong sagot. Let's see. If you notice our angles, number 1, there are 3 angles. We're looking for the measurements of 3 angles. But especially, they are angles on a line. Okay, dapat natutunan natin yan dun sa GeoGebra applet that is attached onto the asynchronous material. Sabi rin, look at sentence 2, the measure of angle 2, right here, is 35 degrees more than that of angle 1. So note how the measurement of angle 2 is sort of dependent on the measurement of angle 1. Kasi whatever the measurement of angle 1 is, angle 2's measurement is 35 degrees more than that. And that's the same thing for angle 3. Look at this. Angle 3, its measure is 25 more than that of angle 1. So, since both measurements of both angles seem to be anchored on the measurement of angle 1, then I guess it's best to represent the measure of angle 1 as x. So yung representation natin, ano? I will let x be the measure of angle 1. And from there, I will base from that representation the measures of angle 2 and 3 to be x plus 35 degrees and x plus 25 degrees respectively. Okay? Now, again, this is a geometry-related problem. We draw. Doesn't have to be a really good drawing. Okay na yan. And label your angles with the measurements from the representation. Remember, these are angles on a line. Ano nga natutunan natin sa angles on a line from the GeoGebra applet? Yeah, they're measurements. No? Sum up to 180 degrees. It doesn't matter if there are 2 angles or 100 angles. As long as they're angles on a line, their measurements should sum up to 180 degrees. And that precisely is the key. No? Summing up to 180 degrees. That precisely is the key to our equation. Therefore, I write my equation as the sum of these three, x plus 35 degrees plus x plus 25 degrees to be equal to 180 degrees. And this looks like a very easy equation to solve. I will leave the simplification to you, but you should get ito, x to be 40 degrees, x plus 35 degrees to be 75 degrees, and x plus 25 degrees to be 65 degrees. Kasi yung tinatanong, find the measures of each angle. So you don't stop at just x equals 40 degrees. You have to look for all three angle measures. Now you can test, no? You can add. What is 40 plus 75 plus 65? Tama naman talaga na 180 degrees yan. So again, we are confident that our angle measures are 40, 75, and 65 degrees respectively for angles 1, 2, and 3. Very simple. Number 2. 4 angles around the point, around the point naman, have measures that are consecutive odd numbers. Halo-halo na. May angles around the point, may angles tayo pinag-uusapan, and consecutive odd numbers. This is similar to an example that we had in the previous lesson. Question is, what is the measure of the largest angle? Again, pause muna, try it yourself. Hit play when you're done. Okay, let's see kung tama ang iyong sagot. We have 4 angles around the point, but the key here, notice, we're dealing with consecutive odd numbers. Sir, last time, consecutive even numbers yung inaral natin eh. Di ba tayo inaral yung odd numbers eh. But again, pause muna. Think about it. How do the odd numbers behave compared to how even numbers behave? Nung last time, di ba? If we let the smallest of consecutive even numbers, say, be x, we get the next consecutive even number, if you remember, by adding 2. X plus 2. Kasi you're skipping, pag nag-add ka ng 1 lang, you end up with x plus 1. If x were even, then x plus 1 would be odd. No? So to skip that, to bypass that odd number, we skip 2 by 2. So, ganun din yung next niya, plus 2 ka ulit, no? To get to x plus 4. Eh, paano pag-add? Ano ginagawa natin dyan? Di ba ganun din dapat? You're also skipping 2. I saw a solution from a student. Sir, kasi odd numbers eh. So, x first, x plus 1 yung second, x plus 3, then x plus 5, and so on. No. It's not like that. You don't add 1. Notice if the first is odd, adding 1 gets you where? To an even number. So, immediately mali yun. Not because it's odd numbers, consecutive odd numbers. Odd numbers din yung ina-add mo? No. You're still skipping by 2. Dapat. It's the same principle. So, that can actually be the start of our representation. I can let x be the measure of the first angle, then x plus 2 the second, x plus 4 the third, x plus 6 degrees the fourth angle, which is the largest angle, obviously, among these 4. Ito pinakamalaki, plus 6 eh. Nagdagdag ka ng 6 degrees eh. Dito 4 lang, dito 2 lang. Dito wala kang dinagdag. So obviously, x plus 6 is our target later on. So I'm looking for the largest angle. Again, let's draw. Crudo, pwede na yan. Then we label with our representations. Yeah? And again, remember, from the GeoGebra applet, what did we learn about angles around the point? That's right. Ang measurements nila, they sum up to 360 degrees. Okay? So again, that is our key. The measures sum up to 360 degrees. That will lead us directly to setting up our equation as this. That's kind of a mouthful, but I will again leave the simplification to you. dapat, when you solve that, you get what? 4x plus 12 equals 360 degrees. Solving further, you should get x equals 87 degrees. Again, that agrees. Oh, odd number yun, no? See? 87 degrees. But do I look for, or do I stop here? X equals 87. Again, sabi ni Polya, look back. Ano ba tinatanong? What is the measure of the largest angle? Is x the representation for the measure of the largest angle? Diba? No, it's not. The largest angle, sabi natin kanina, has a measurement that is x plus 6 degrees. So, evaluate natin yun. What is x plus 6? Given that x is 87 degrees, you get 93 degrees. Therefore, no, the measure of the largest of the four angles around the point is 93 degrees. Okay, very simple. Again, you can test that. The four consecutive angles are 87 degrees. Then you next add 89 degrees. Next add would be 91 degrees. And then your largest 93 degrees. Pag in-add mo yun, di ba 360 naman talaga? 360 degrees ang sagot? Correct. And they are, in fact, consecutive odd numbers. Okay? Next example. A square and an equilateral triangle. Oops. New term. Equilateral triangle. Baka kailangan i-Google muna. Have the same perimeter. If one side of the triangle is 12 centimeters long, what is the area of the square? Again, pause muna. Try it yourself, then hit play when you're done. Okay, this point, you should have an answer, an attempt at least. So we have a square and an equilateral triangle, the same perimeter. But what is the question, sir? What is the area of the square? And how do we determine the area of the square? Ano kailangan natin? Di ba kailangan natin ang length, no, ng isang side ng square? Because if we have that, we simply multiply it by itself, we get the area. Diba? The area of a square is s squared, where s is the length of a side of a square. So maybe if I find the length of the side, a side of the square, masagot ko yung tanong. So I need to start there. I would let x be the length of the side of the square. And I draw one square, one triangle. No? Very basic drawing. And I label with what I know. I know for now that the side of the triangle is 12 centimeters. But again, sabi ko kanina, is this a new term? Equilateral triangle? Kung new term at ginugol mo kanina, you should have found that an equilateral triangle, remember, has three sides that have the same length. O, diba? So if that is 12, then dapat 12 din tong dalawa. Yeah? Well, same for the square. The square, dapat yan, all x's. But look at this. How do we determine, kasi we're talking about perimeter. How do we determine the perimeter of a square? Yeah, it's 4 times the side length. But since we let the side length to be x, its perimeter, therefore, is 4 times x. And for the triangle, since the three sides have the same measurement, or in grade 8, ang term na gagamitin nyo dyan, congruent. No? The sides are congruent, meaning they have equal measurements. You have 3 sides, all with 12 centimeter lengths. How do you determine the area of that triangle? Right, it's 3 times 12 centimeters. But again, look at our problem. There's a key phrase here. Your square and your triangle have the same perimeter. O, diba? Ano perimeter ng square? Ito daw, 4x. 4 times x. A perimeter ng triangle, ito, 3 times 12 centimeters. But they are the same. Oh, then that should lead us directly to setting up our equation. Diba? Ang equation natin, same daw yun eh. The 4 times x equals 3 times 12. So, very simple. Sabi ko anong previous video, diba? Once you have correctly set up your representation and equation, it's all downhill from there. Because typically, the equations that you will end up with are super simple ones. The trick really is to unlock the equation from the words. Nandun yung challenge. But beyond that, look at this. 4x equals 3 times 12. That's super, super simple. That's 4x equals 36 centimeters. X therefore is 9 centimeters. Do we box that? Is that our final answer? Masaya na ba tayo dito? No. Sabi ni Polya, oops, look back. What is the question? What is the area of the square? But do we know the length of the side? Yes, 9. Kasi sabi sa representation natin, no? X is the length of the side of the square. So we know that to be 9 already. So what do we do now? Very simply, we square that value. The area of the square is the square of 9 centimeters. So we have 81. Pause. How do you read this properly? It should be read as 81 square centimeters. There are a lot of students who read this wrong. Ang basa nila rito from left to right, look at this. 81 centimeters squared. Now, typically, students read it that way, but that's incorrect. You should read it like this. 81 square centimeters. Ang basa dyan, ang tama. When you get to grade 8, we're talking about volume instead of area. Let's say you have 81 and then this symbol. No, you do not read it as 81 centimeters cubed. Nakapagalitan ka na mga teacher mo. No. You read it as 81 cubic centimeters. Okay? Tandaan nyo yun, ha? For next year yun. So, our final answer here, therefore, is the area of the square is 81. Again, ang tamang basa, 81 square centimeters. Good. Napakadali. Number 4. Ito, medyo tricky itong problem. Look at this. A baby, may babies playing with circular chips of different sizes. She wants to put them inside a box. May chips. Chips are circular. Okay? But only through the larger of 2 circular holes. Yung box daw, may dalawang circular holes. Okay? With circumferences 10 and 18 inches respectively. Question is, what are the possible radii of chips that can be put inside the box through the larger hole but not through the smaller? Pause muna ulit, isip-isip, try to solve it, then hit play when you're done. Right. This point, meron ka dapat attempt or meron ka ng sagot. Very good kung meron. So, tingnan natin. Let's see if we understand the problem right. So, we have a box. No, in fact, we can start with the drawing. Doesn't have to be a pretty box. Merong box daw. Yan. Tapos may baby naglalaro, no? Na meron siyang mga circular chips. The size of the chips, I think, can vary. Dahil nga tinatanong what are the possible radii of chips? So, pwedeng may maliliit, may malalaki na chips, no? Maliliit, malalaki. But what we know is that the box has 2 circular holes. 10 inches in circumference and 18. So, may dalawa. No? May isang 10, may isang 18. And the baby is trying to put inside the box these circular chips. Pero, tinan nyo to, may importanteng condition. Only through the larger of the 2 circular holes. So, gusto niya pasok sa box etong mga chips, but only through the larger of the 2 holes. Not in this one. Question is, what are the possible radii? And by the way, look at this word right here. Radii. That's how you read it. Not radii. Radii. Much like ray, d, I. No, radii. That's the plural of radius. Radius. Radii. Ang plural niya. Okay? So, what are the possible radii of chips that can be put inside the box? Ano ba hinahanap natin? Possible radii of chips. And maybe we can start there. Simulan natin dito sa pag-represent natin. No? I will let X be a possible radius of a chip that can be put inside the box. Pero may condition Dapat hindi siya maipasok dun sa smaller of the 2 holes, circular holes. Pero dapat may pasok siya dun sa larger. So let's draw. Hole 1, I know that to have a circumference of 10 inches. Hole 2, 18 inches in circumference. Again, what we want, sabi sa problem, dapat papasok siya sa bigger hole, hole 2, but not in hole 1. Question, how can a chip be inserted in hole 1? Di ba mangyayari lang yun kapag mas maliit yung circumference niya kay hole 1? Oh, but we don't want that. We don't want, again, no, we don't want the circumference of the chip to be less than the circumference of hole 1. We don't even want it to be equal kasi masastuck lang yun dun sa hole. In fact, we want the circumference of the chip to be larger than that of hole 1 para hindi siya magkasya. Pero not too large that it won't fit hole 2 anymore, which means the circumference of the chip has to be less than that of hole 2. Di ba? Nagets nyo yun? Again, no? A chip can fit only the larger hole if the circumference of the chip is greater than hole 1. Kasi pag mas malaki siya sa hole 1, di siya papasok nung kay hole 1. Pero dapat, kakasya siya kay hole 2. So it cannot be bigger than that. It has to be smaller than that. And isn't that exactly this inequality? If the circumference of the chip is C, shouldn't it be greater than 10 inches and less than 18 inches? Inequality. Diba? But of course, although we cannot, obviously it's an inequality we're dealing with here, but we cannot write this inequality for our inequality after the representation. Why not? Kasi hindi ba natin dineclare kung sino yung C? We did not define what C is. But remember, the circumference of a circle, remember, is 2 pi r. And we let x be the possible radius of a chip. So, I can express C in terms of x. At yun mismo ang gagawin ko when I set up my inequality. O, diba? Basically, si C din ito nasa gitna. This one right here. That's still C. The circumference of the circle. It's still 2 pi r. It's just that the r, the radius, takes on x based on our representation. Diba? How do we solve this again? This kind of compound statement. Diba? Tinuro last module. We can split that into two simpler statements, then solve separately. Again, I'll skip through the steps, but you should end up with this compound inequality for your solution set. Now take note, whenever we're doing computations with circles, of course, that would involve, whether for circumference or area, that would involve the use of the number pi. Our agreement, makinig dito, gentlemen, our agreement is that you use the approximate 3.14 for all computations. And whenever necessary, we always round off to the nearest hundreds. Okay? In other words, 2 decimal places tayo mag-round off. Okay? Much like what I did here in the solution. So, again, x is a possible radius of the chip. So look at this final solution set. X is greater than 1.59 inches but less than 2.87 inches. Para magkasya siya sa hole 2 but not in hole 1. That is my final answer. Only chips that have radii that measure between, meaning hindi kasama yung 1.59. Sir, bakit kapag 1.59? Kasi 1.59 inches ang radius ni hole 1. Kung yun din ang radius ng chip mo, papasok ba yun? Hindi, di ba? Masa-stuck lang siya dun. Same goes for hole 2. If the chip has a radius of 2.87 inches, masa-stuck lang siya kay hole 2. Cannot pass through. Yeah? So it has to be bigger than 1.59 inches but less than 2.87 inches. The radius, I mean, of a chip so that it can fit hole 2 but not hole 1. Tulad ng specification ng problem natin. Diba? Ganda, no? Nice. Right, next. Paano naman yung mga age-related word problems? Ano dapat natin gawin dito? Much like in the demonstration, in the examples in the asynchronous material, a key is to tabulate. No, gagawa tayo ng mga age tables and the time periods in the problem, like the keywords typically, now, 2 years ago, in 3 years, those are your time periods, no, as stated in the problem. And be careful about this, of course. when you write your time periods as headings of your columns, it is advisable, not required, advisable lang, no? That you write them in chronological order. Meaning, nasa left yung nasa past, papunta sa right, of course. Much like how a number line works. No? So in this case, it should look like that. Mauna yung past 2 years ago, then the present, then the future. So pakanan. Sir, sabi mo hindi naman required. Yeah, hindi naman required kahit i-jumble mo yan. Kaya lang mahirapan ka sa solutions. No, mahirap mag-navigate from cell to cell. Unlike if you do it like this. It's like looking at a number line when you arrange your time periods in chronological order from left to right. No? So that's another key. And then we write the expressions under our representation. Typically, we let X be the age of someone at a certain time period. So we use that representation to fill out initially certain cells in our age table. And then for the rest of the cells, you do not go back to the problem to find information that will help you fill out the empty cells. Everything you need to fill out the age table is right here. And yung mga headings, so 2 years ago, in 3 years, and then you have the basis of using X and 2X as present ages. So that's precisely how we will approach that. We will complete the table by adding or subtracting years based on the headings. Again, that was demonstrated thoroughly in the asynchronous material. But look at this, no? 2 years ago, Mike, who is X years old now, should be X minus 2. No? Pete, 2X minus 2. Look, pag 2 years ago, nagma-minus 2 ka. Parang ngayon, ilang taon na ba kayo ngayon? You're what, 10, 11? How old were you 2 years ago? Di ba minus 2 lang naman ang age? Same thing. Paano sir pag 3 years? Oh, plus 3 ka lang. Very simple. And then once you have completed this table, we can set up our equation or inequality base sa binigay na relationship, mga hints and clues in the problem. For example, in this case, sinabi, in 3 years, the sum of their ages will be 36. Tingin ako sa column ng 3 years. And then I add the ages to get 36. Then I simplify. Yeah. Of course, you saw some examples already in the asynchronous material. But let's look at some more here. Jill's and her son's age sum up to 56. 4 years back, she was thrice as old as her son. How old are they? Pause mo na ulit. Try, and then hit play when you're done. Right. Meron ng solution. Tingnan natin. How old are they? Jill's and her son's age sum up to 56. Anong pwede natin representation dito? Tingnan natin. Si Jill, tsaka si son, syempre, magiging labels natin dito. Ito yung headings natin. May 4 years back. And, sir, paano mo nalaman na may now? Wala naman dito nakalagay na word na now. In this particular type, importanteng ginagamit natin dito, grammar. No? Look at this. Jill's age, sum up to. Look at this, sum up to. Sum up to is a verb in the present tense. And in fact, how old are they is also asking, no, how old they are at present without having to say the word present or now. Just based on the tense, alam natin, present age ang tinatanong. So, maybe that's, again, where I can start my representation. I can let X be Jill's present age. And, tinan yung first sentence, their ages sum up to 56. Meron na tayong examples ng ganito sa previous type of word problem, no? 2 numbers with a given sum. I can represent one with a variable. The other is the total less that variable. So, using these 2 representations, these 2 expressions, no? X and 56 minus X. Yun ilalagay ko rito. And then again, sir, do I look back at the problem to completely fill out the table? Again, no. Everything you need is in the table. Sir, ilalagay ko dito sa age ni Jill 4 years ago. Gawin mo reference yung age niya ngayon. X. How old was she 4 years ago? So, dapat yan X minus 4. Same thing for her son. Less 4 ka lang. Diba? Everything you need to fill it out completely will be there. And then, sabi sa problem, 4 years back. 4 years back, she, referring to Jill, was thrice, ano yan sir? Di ba 3 times yan? As old as her son. So, in this time period rather, yung age ni Jill ay makukuha mo if you titriplihin mo yung age ni son. So, if I multiply this by 3, I get this. O, diba? That will be my equation. Oh. Jill's age 4 years ago is the same as thrice her son's age in that time period. O, diba? Basa problem. Again, I'll leave the simplification to you. But you should get x equals 40. Do you stop there? No, sir. Kasi ang tanong, how old are they? Dalawa yan. So, kunin ko rin 56 minus x to be 16. Again, you can test that. If Jill is now 40, how old was she 4 years ago? Minus 4 mo yan, 36. How old was her son 4 years ago? 12. Tama ba na 4 years back, Jill was thrice as old as her son? Oh, di ba? Check. That's one way of checking. No? Bilis. Check mo kagad kung tama ka o mali. So finally, we state that Jill is 40 and her son is 16. No problem. Napakadali. Next example. Tony is 5 years Maria's senior. Oh, is Tony and Maria. Saan palabas nyo napanood? In 6 years, he will have been twice as old as Anna was 9 years ago. I think this is a typo. This is not supposed to be Anna. There's a third character. No, that's still Maria. Okay? Was 9 years ago. How old are they? Sure, medyo complicated. Try it out first. Hit play when you're done. Right. Dapat meron akong sample dito. Tony is 5 years Maria's senior. Ibig sabihin, sino mas matanda? Si Tony, si Maria. Si Tony. Diba? Siya is 5 years Maria's senior. So, mas matanda si Tony ng 5 years. So, again, if I start constructing my table, siyempre, si Tony at si Maria. Pero ano yung ating headings? Dapat mga time periods yun eh. So, go back to the problem. Start looking for time periods. Tony is. O di meron kang now or the present time. In 6 years. Meron niya future. In 6 years. Lista mo na. He will have been twice as old as Anna was 9 years ago. Naku po. Sir, nagkanda buhol-buhol na. 9 years ago. How old are they? Present. Pero meron na ako nung now. Okay na. I have 1, 2, 3 time periods. And when I write them, I will do so in chronological order. Past muna, present, and future. Ang gulo, no? Mukhang sa unang tingin, ang hirap ng problem, pero ang dali lang yan. Once we have mapped it out completely. Look at this. What would my representation be? I could say, let X be Tony's present age. And if Tony is currently X years old, Maria would be younger by 5 years. So, X minus 5. And then what? Let's use these expressions to fill out our table. Saan, sir, lalagay? Present nga. Under the now column. So, dito yung X minus 5. Yeah? And again, how do we fill out our table? Do we look back at the problem? Look for clues? No. Again, everything you need is right there in the table already. Headings, use those as either adding or subtracting years. For 9 years ago, syempre, we subtract. You have x minus 9 and x minus 5 minus 9. 9 years ago eh. Yung future, in 6 years, pwede add ka ng 6. O, diba? Kompleto na siya. Na-complete na natin yung table. Now, we look at the problem. Look at this. Second sentence. In 6 years, saan ang tingin ko dito? He, si Tony, will have been twice as old. Age daw ni Tony. Will have been twice as old as Anna was 9 years ago. But Ito na naman si Ana. Sorry, Maria nga pala yan. Maria was 9 years ago. Oh, but how old was Maria 9 years ago? Eto. So yung key sa aking equation, sa aking problem muna, are these two cells. Diba? Sabi in 6 years, he will have been twice as old. So, yung age daw ni Tony in 6 years, doble ng age ni Maria 9 years ago. Again, that will be my equation right there. Look, x plus 6, Tony's age in 6 years is double, no, or twice Anna's age. Maria, na nakulit, no? Maria's age 9 years ago. Okay? Si Tony and Maria yan sa di ba? Sa West Side Story. Sino kaya si Anna? Now we solve the equation. Okay? I'll leave the simplification to you, but you should get x to be 34. Do we stop there? No, the question is how old are they? So, you also evaluate x minus 5. That gives you 29. Does it work, sir, in the context of the problem? Look at this. 34 si Tony yan. Di ba? X si Tony. In 6 years, how old will Tony be? 34 plus 6. 40 na si Tony. X minus 5. Ito si Maria. Current age, 29. But how old was she 9 years ago? Minus 9 mo yan, 20. Tama ba? Na etong age na to ay doble nito? Correct. Di ba? So, final answer natin ay Tony is 34 and Maria is 29. Diba? Dali, no? Basta kailangan lang ma-map out natin completely yung ating information using our age table. Last example. Ralph is 41 and Paul is 5. Ano yung tatanong dyan, sir? Alam natin age nila pareho. In how many years will Paul's age be a third of Ralph's? Pause muna. Try it yourself. Hit play when you're done. Right. Dapat meron na kayong sagot or attempt at least. Gawa tayong table. R muna pala. Sorry. In this example. In how many years daw? So, ano ba yung natanong natin dito? Alam natin age ni Ralph. Alam natin age ni Paul. What do we need to know? What we need to know is how many years daw will Paul's age be a third of Ralph's? So, ang hinahanap natin, not an age, but rather, a certain number of years that has to elapse before this condition is met. Okay, so I will let x be exactly that. The number of years that it will take before Paul's age is a third of Ralph's age. Ang haba ng representation mo, pero yan yung tamang gawin. And based on that, ngayon pa lang tayo gagawa ng table. We have, of course, Ralph and Paul there. Siyempre, meron ko ng present time. Ralph is 41. Paul is 5. So, now. Pero meron kang, time period in the future. When is that? In the future. I don't know. It's actually in X years. So, in X years, whenever that will be, Paul's age will be a third of Ralph's. Okay. But, again, let's fill out our table with what we know. What do we know? Do we know how many years that will take? Hindi, yun nga tinatanong. Do we know how old Ralph and Paul are now? Yes we do. Ayan, 41 and 5. Lagay natin yan. Again, in X years, that's something looking into the future. X years from now. So, kung si Ralph ngayon ay 41, how old will he be in X years? Correct. Plus X ka. Same is true with Paul. Plus X ka. And in that time period, sabi, Paul's age, yung edad ni Paul, the younger guy, will be a third of Ralph's. 1/3 lang ng age ni Ralph in X years, yung age ni Paul. Diba? Yung equation ko. Look, 41 plus X, yung age ni Ralph, makukuha ko yun if I triple Paul's age. Diba? Kasi nga 1/3 lang . So if I multiply that by 3, these two ages should match. This is my equation. Look, ang hirap niya intindihin, maybe. But the equation it reveals is a really simple equation. And if you solve that, you should get something like this, x to be 13. What does that mean, sir? Look at x. The number of years it takes before Paul's age is a third of Ralph's. So 13, ano yan, 13 years old? No, 13 years. Look at this. If Ralph is 41, in 13 years, he would be 54. Paul is now 5. In 13 years, he'd be 18. Tama, oh look. If I multiply 3 by 18, I do get 54. So correct. 18 is in fact a third of 54. O, di ba? So, my final answer? Oh, sorry. In 13 years, there you go, Paul's age will be a third of Ralph's age. Tama. Okay. Balikan yung mga examples kung nalitong konti. But, for now, what's left to do? Ito. You have 3 problems here. This time around, hindi lang basta R and E. For this FA, exit ticket, solve all 3 completely. Okay? Sulat ang representation, set up the equation, show your full solutions, state your final answer in a concise sentence. Full RESA or RISA format. Okay? Meron yang Google Slides that your teacher will assign to you where you will post your answers. Okay? Mag-consult sa teacher kung kinakailangan. Patapos na ang school year. Focus, boys. Mag-aral mabuti. I know this is not really the easiest of topics, but this is what these recorded lectures are for. You can always go back to them at your convenience. Okay? Galingan ng pag-aaral, mag-notes lagi, mag-consult kung kinakailangan. Thank you.